Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. Today, we have a special episode. This time, I was at the other side of the table, where my friend David Wells interviewed me for his podcast, New Year's Revolutionary, Do Better This Year. David is a great interviewer with an inquisitive mind. His blog and podcast revolve around personal and professional development methods and principles, which typically starts with New Year's resolutions. I was honored to be one of his guests and enjoying our time together, unpacking ideas, concepts, and strategies that I use in my professional and personal life. I'd love to hear what you think about this episode, and let me know what was the most important topic that grabbed your attention. Please remember to rate and review the Power of Design podcast in iTunes, and contact me via Instagram and let me know what topics or people you want to hear about. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to always pursue your full potential through the power of design.
Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David.
I'm really excited to get this conversation started. But before we jump in, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our mutual friend, Henry Grisey.
That's right.
I wanted to thank Henry for getting us connected. And I'm really glad that he did get us connected, because you and it's been almost a year now, I guess, since we first met in this office.
Wow,
and,
a year?
Yeah, well, it was fall, so we're coming up on it.
Wow.
But you were very helpful. Henry had just been interviewed on your podcast, and Henry knew I was interested in starting a podcast, and he was willing to make the introduction so that I could kind of pick your brain on it. And that was so helpful for me. It really was. And so I wanted to thank Henry, but I also wanted to thank you, because we wouldn't be having this conversation today if it weren't for you. And I really appreciate it.
Sure, man. No, I'm proud of you, because I remember we talked about it and then you disappear. And 45 days later, your podcast was out there, right. And I'm listening to the first episode. I'm like, man, dude.
That's right.
He's taking the steps. I like it, man. I like that you listen and then you execute it immediately.
Well, thank you. And I don't know. I just feel like you just gave really good advice and just helped clear up a lot of questions for me. And so here we are. And so on the subject of podcasting, I noticed that you actually just came upon a big milestone yourself. Your podcast, The Power of Design, just had its 1 year anniversary. So I thought a fun way to start the conversation was, first of all, say congratulations, but also what have you learned so far from your experiences in the podcasting platform?
I always say that podcasting changed my life and my business. I think that was a huge thing for me. It's something that I always thought about doing. I've been listening to podcasts for maybe 7 years. I always wanted to do one, but you're like, oh man, I don't know how to do that. And what am I going to talk about? And I was very self-conscious about my accent. I was like, well, nobody's going to understand what I'm saying. I'm not even a very good conversationalist. When I talk to people, I may talk for 10 minutes, but after that, I'm like, oh man, so yeah, sure. So I had a lot of reasons why not to do it, but I started it mainly because of business reasons. I was in a point where starting my business, I was selling and doing at the same time. And I saw podcasting as a really good way to add value to my community, keep my name out there in the marketplace, and just gain more visibility, which, it's something that it's working. So I think there are three main things that I have learned after 1 year of podcasting. And the first thing will be about myself, that, I really took the step to do it when I was still very scared and not very confident. And after 25 interviews that I have done, I feel now very confident. I feel really good. I know the first few episodes I had my script. I knew what I was going to say. It was very calculated. And now I feel very flexible. I can, go and jump from conversation to conversation and topics and kind of get around an idea. So I feel really good about that. I've learned a lot about my confidence had grown a lot, which is good. It just makes me feel much better about myself. The other thing that I've learned is about others. When you invite somebody to a podcast, first of all, they feel good about it because you're giving them attention. You make them feel important. And we all crave attention. That we are like that. We're humans. So everybody's very excited for the opportunity. And usually people share a lot. They share their ideas, their talents, what they're doing. And people are very open. And I've learned that as I have those conversations with people, you usually in a podcast, you have a deeper conversation than if you were in a different setting, like business or even casual. And when you have those deeper conversations, those relationships with those people, they become better. They're tighter. So that's been really good. And the third thing that I've learned is just the power of podcasting today as one of the channels that technology is allowing to be more accessible to everybody. How important is that? For my business, it's been huge because, I interview top leaders in the marketplace where I live, in the world of design, construction, and real estate. And when people see my face out there and they listen to my voice, and I'm the only constant in those conversations, my personal brand gets elevated. And many people, when they're thinking about services that I might be providing, when I meet them, they already trust me, right? They transfer, all those ideas, all the work that has been done, they already put it in front of my face and they're like, yeah, no, I'm ready. And we want you to do this project. It's giving me a very unique differentiator in the marketplace. So that will be in the side of, technology and business.
That's awesome. And I feel like I've experienced a lot of similar things. Like in particular, when you were talking about how the podcasting platform kind of has a way of fast tracking relationship building.
Yeah.
It's you really do get into deeper, more nuanced conversations with people than you otherwise. I mean, I think about like Henry, for example. Henry was the second person that I interviewed. And I've known Henry since he was like 12. But in the process of preparing for that and then having that conversation, I learned so much about him, and it gave me chances to ask, there are qualities that he has that I've always been curious about, and to hear the background behind that. I feel like that's something that you're right. You don't get necessarily in just your day-to-day conversations with people. And yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot about myself through this process too. It's been really eye-opening, and I feel like it's been a great development area for me. So I'm glad that it has for you. And your podcast is really, really good. And if anybody out there is listening, you should definitely check out The Power of Design. It's what I like about it is that it's industry focused, but at the same time, I feel like you just start to notice that people from all sorts of different backgrounds, they run into the same issues. They have the same challenges, and hearing their kind of strategies and tactics for overcoming them is it's inspiring, and it's really fun to see the similarities, those strains that run through every industry. And I'll always forget I don't remember which episode it was, but the lady that you interviewed, it was like her grandfather or something who was, he like commercial real estate. Yeah. What, would you mind recounting the story?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, she's in commercial real estate. So she was telling a story about her, grandfather, that he was in, also commercial real estate many years ago. So he was giving a tour of a building, like at let's say the top of the building, in an empty space. Imagine, all glass around. And so he was showing the space for a company, see if they would want to lease that space for, their offices. So they were kind of concerned because there was just too much glass around the building. And he just started running as fast as he could and just slammed the glass.
Just ran into the glass.
Run into the glass just to show them, look at how safe this is.
I was in the car listening to that episode and I just died. I started laughing just imagining that. That is that is awesome. That's how you sell right there.
Yeah.
Just run into the glass. So you guys should totally listen because that's the type of content that you'll get. But it's a very fun podcast and I listened to your early episodes and I thought that you started off strong and you've, it keeps getting better. So that's awesome. So normally the way that I start these interviews is I kind of just open it up and say, tell me about where you're from, how you got to where you are. And I'll usually say, start back as far as you want. In your case, I'll just go ahead and say it. Henry specifically told me, he was like, see if you can get him to at least start the story with coming to America, because I've heard bits and pieces and I think it's a fascinating story and an inspiring story and one that I think that listeners would really benefit from hearing. So at least start there, but go back as far as you want.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think I start giving a summary of short parts and then I'll focus on my transition to being here. So, I was born in Medellin, Colombia. Medellin, it's a beautiful city. It's where Pablo Escobar is from. That's what people know about Medellin.
I know. I'm sorry. That's immediately where I went with it.
Yeah, but we were born in the same neighborhood, but I was probably, 15 years after him. So I knew about what was going on, but never saw anything. So I grew up in Medellin. I was born in Medellin and then we moved to Bogota, which is the capital of Colombia. And, went to school there. I have two younger brothers. I went to architecture school in Colombia. And during architecture school, when I started kind of falling in love with design and space, I will always look at really good, nice books about design, worldwide design, architecture. And I started getting a fascination for, mainly deconstructivism architecture and many architects that they were, foreign architects. So I was like, oh man, I need to go work for one of these guys, but they're not in Colombia. So I always look at that. I thought about it, looked really good. And then I graduated from architecture school, started working for a company, and I started saving everything I made during 1 year. And which was not a lot of money. I probably saved $1,000. And so I just talked to my parents, and my younger brother was graduating from high school. And we talked about, coming to America, and my dad gave us $2,000. So in total, we have $3,000. And we got on a plane. We went to Atlanta, Georgia, because my cousins live in Georgia, in Atlanta. I have 4 cousins there. So the plan was to come and just, pursue and find the American dream. So we came here. We came to Atlanta. We were there for about a week. And we had another cousin that was living here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, with my brother, after 2 weeks being in Atlanta, we came to Charlotte to visit and to, just see the city, it's a place we've never been before. And when we saw Charlotte for the first time, I told my brother, we're not leaving. And he said, you're right, we're not leaving. So we came for a weekend and we never left. It was crazy. So we came with $3,000. We stayed at her apartment for 2 nights. And then I started walking, around South Boulevard, found an apartment complex, and I paid for 3 months of rent for an apartment for, 1 room. And then we bought a car for $1,000. And then we had $1,000 left for groceries. I didn't know English. Now that I tell this story, I'm like, who is that crazy person? So we did that. Okay. Now keep in mind this. We came with tourist visa, which is you come to the country and you can stay, be a tourist for 6 months. At 6 months, you need to leave, right? So we had that clock ticking, right? So during those 6 months, at that time, I became an immigration expert because I knew about every single, process and how things work legally. So as a tourist, if you find another visa, like their working visas or sponsor visas that you can switch to, then you can stay longer and for a specific purpose. It's all about paperwork and, money and transactions and lawyers. So I knew people will come to United States and they get a working visa and they stay. So I'm like, okay, I want a working visa, but I didn't know more. I just knew that people do that. So we're here, and so we still need to make money and pay our bills. So I found a job in a place with another guy that I met here from Colombia as well, cleaning windows. So we would clean windows of homes that were just recently built, like developer homes, and you will go and clean all the windows. So they will pay 10 cents a window. It was ridiculous. And so we started cleaning windows. My younger brother, started working in construction, like laying sheetrock, things like that. And my brother knew a little bit of English because he was in bilingual school in Colombia. I didn't know much English. And we had an apartment with no furniture. I bought a phone, a cricket phone, no computer, and we would sleep on carpet. Like we had nothing. After that, I went to, let's say we were doing that for about a month. And my friend who was with me cleaning the windows, he said, hey man, I'm going to pay for my car insurance. I'm going to stop here at this agency, State Farm. I'm going to bring the check. Can you go with me? I'm like, sure. Yeah. So we went there and he was paying for his car insurance, and the insurance agency was a lady from Venezuela. And she was like, hey, yeah, how are you guys doing? We were like speaking Spanish and everything. And she's like, hey, I have a part-time job in a restaurant. It's nice. They pay well. It's a Cuban restaurant. If you guys want another job or something, let me know and I'll talk to the owner. So we're like, sure, sounds good. So we went there and yeah, I got a job. So I got a job as a busboy. So they're like, okay, now you're the busboy. I'm like, okay, what is the busboy? What is the busboy do? When I realized I was like mopping, cleaning toilets, helping everybody, making about $4 an hour. But I was really happy. Like I loved them. I was like, oh my God, I'm in the United States working. This is amazing, man. So it was a Cuban restaurant and I used, will go work. I will mop, clean the floors, clean the toilets, bake bread, the whole thing. And all that was new to me and I never did that, but I did it. And I was so happy. Like I really felt that I was getting closer to my dream, that job in United States with those architects in those magazines that I was in. I was like, oh my God, I'm close to this. So at that point, let's say we've been in the country for about 3 months. So I knew that if we stayed more than 6 months and nothing happened, I need to go back to Colombia, because if I stay, I was an illegal immigrant and that's all kinds of trouble. And I was not willing to do that. So what I did at the restaurant is I found the yellow pages and I ripped 4 pages with all architecture firms in Charlotte. I was like, put it in my pocket. And then I went back to my apartment. I'm like, okay, I need to contact these people. And so I call and they're like, oh yeah, send your resume. I'm like, yeah, what is a resume? I didn't know. So I called a friend. They explained to me, well, a resume is like, these things what you have in Colombia, you call it like your hoja de vida, but it's not the same. So I kind of learned through what I needed to do. I went to a library, created my resume, and now I had something, right? And besides that, I had a folder with a lot of work that I did in school and the experience that I had in Colombia, which it was a lot of CAD work, AutoCAD and plans and things like that. So I have things to show, which, is what really matters. So I made a list of 20 20 architecture firms, and I will get up early on my only day off, which I think it was Mondays. And I will just show up to the architecture firms. Like, I didn't know the process of how do you apply for a job, like, resume or call or online. No, I would knock the door and I will go in, and the first person I see, I said, I'm looking for a job. That's what I needed to know. So most people were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Thank you. Leave your resume here. So I did that at many places. And at some places they were really nice. At some places they said, no, you need to apply online. This is the email. This is the phone number. This is what you need to do. And at one company that I went to, it was located on South Boulevard on South End. So I went in there, I had my portfolio, and I walk in there, same thing. I'm looking for a job. And a guy was like, okay, is that your portfolio? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, let me see it. So I sit down with him and start looking at the portfolio. And he's like, wait a second. Charles, come here. You need to see this. He brings Charles. and they're looking at the portfolio and like nodding and looking at each other. I'm like, oh man, this looks nice. So they're like, this work looks really good. Why don't you set up with the front desk person and a formal interview, because we're three partners, and the three partners will meet with you again and we look at it. So I said, okay, that sounds good. So I set up the interview. And at the restaurant, there was a lady and her boyfriend was a paralegal in an immigration office. So I talked to her and say, hey, how does this thing work about working visas? Because I have no idea. So she contacted me with a boyfriend. I talked to him, talked to a lawyer, and they're like, okay, yeah, we can give you like an appointment. It's like $300 for 1 hour. And I'm like, oh my God, $300, Jesus Christ, for 1 hour. And I'm like, but it was an investment. Like, I need to know how this works. So that's what I did. I paid and I went and met with the lawyer. So she kind of explained to me, it's basically the company needs to sign a lot of paperwork for you where they say they're responsible for you in the country. They're giving you this job. These are your duties. This is how much they're going to pay you. And they're hiring you because they haven't found anybody else in the area that can do what you do, those skills. So I go to the interview later, and then, I'm with these architects and I'm showing my work and they like it. So that was probably the best and hardest sell of my life, which is I not only need a job, I need you to be my sponsor for a working visa, which you don't really know me. And it costs $3,500, which I don't have, and they need to be paid, and attorney fees need to be paid. And they're like, oh, okay. And gave them the business card. So I went, met with them. Let's say at that point, I was probably 4 months in the country. I go back to the restaurant, cleaning toilets, doing the whole thing. My brother working in construction. And I got a call about a week later. And this architect said, we like your work. I think you could be a good fit here. But, we don't know how to check your references. We don't know much about you. How do you feel about coming here and maybe work 1 week just as a test? We'll give you some tasks and see how you feel, see how we feel. And with, no commitment, just like contract work, and we'll pay you for that. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So that was the craziest week of my life, because I went and showed up and they're like, okay, can you do this? So they gave me this floor plan, do it in AutoCAD. And I sit down in that computer and I was like working like my maniac. Like that computer was on fire. I was like, next, give me more. So I worked like crazy that week. Like I did everything I could. It was my chance. That was it. So they, at the end of the week, they're like, okay, we're going to meet and we'll let you know. We're going to talk about this. So I go back to the restaurant, working hard at the restaurant. I had probably 5 months in the country, like my window was closing. And one day I got a call from the lawyer that I met with. And she said, well, just want to let you know that this company that you talked to, they called me. They just paid for your working visa. You start next week.
There have been a couple times during that story where you paused and I wanted to say something, but I was just genuinely speechless. That is a crazy story. And well, first of all, it just makes me feel like all of my excuses are dumb. And just like any sort of obstacles I may perceive in my career are just it's all a mindset thing. But also, I mean, well, first of all, just congratulations on that just absolutely amazing story. Thanks. It's incredibly inspiring. And I don't know. I also just feel like, there's a lot, and I don't want this to get political, but there's a lot going on politically these days. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads and looking at our country and wondering like kind of what's going on and what's our country about. And I just want to say that every part of your story is what I think this country should be about. I don't know. And I'll just leave it at that. But I just think thank you so much for sharing that. That is wild. But like, how am I supposed to work with that? That's not a playbook. That's crazy.
I know.
But I don't know, man. Man, I'm glad that Henry said, "Oh, you got to ask him about that," because that delivered for sure. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay, so design. One thing that I wanted to talk about is your podcast is The Power of Design, and design is one of those words that I feel like it means different things to different people. So I want to be clear about kind of coming to terms, because I think we're going to talk about this a good amount during this conversation. What is the power of design, and why is the power of design important?
The power of design lies in design enhances our experience of life. I believe that. And there are many definitions of, exactly what design is. When you look at everything you have, everything you see has been designed. Somebody thought about that, right? There has been a process for it. Somebody created it. Somebody had ideas about it, and it has been designed for a purpose. Sometimes people, in general, to me, confuse artistic expression with design. They're different things, Design is not only visual and beautiful with your eyes. To me, design is more about the process of how you get to things, right? How you get to solutions. I don't differentiate design from somebody designing a website or a magazine or a building from the process of designing a contract or designing a business model or designing a profitable business. You can have the same approach. It's not, some people say, "Oh no, I'm not design oriented. I'm not artistic." Or yes, we all have it, because to me, the beautiful thing is, as humans, we're always in this tension between our heart and our mind, right? They pull in like different sides, like our heart, start your business, your mind, don't be crazy, right? But good design is the perfect combination between function and something beautiful, right? Something that speaks to your heart and your mind. Like you see something and you're like, "Man, this looks amazing. I love it. I feel good about it." And then you use it and it's user friendly and it's nice and it works and it's of quality. So your experience of that design is making your life better because you're feeling much better.
I feel like I've fallen into that trap before, where I think of the word design and I immediately associate it with like aesthetics.
Yes.
And so I don't know. Well, you and I were talking earlier about my conversation with Dino a few weeks ago, and we talked about Apple products, and I feel like Apple. It seems like they're kind of like the poster child of design.
Yeah.
They're a good example that everybody knows of that clearly puts a lot of thought into their products. And we were talking about AirPods and how thoughtfully designed they are and all that. But then I was thinking, but the reason why, at least the reason I tell myself, the reason why I use AirPods is because they work reliably. Sure. And I think I sometimes make the mistake of automatically thinking, being design oriented means, caring more about, as you said, like the visual aspect of it. But you're right. I mean, design applies to everything.
Everything.
Like literally everything. I have questions down here later in the interview about like project management. And as you were talking, I was immediately thinking that's something you design and things like that. And, well, that's very helpful. I think that's a very helpful definition that you provided. One thing, and this is going to be kind of a dumb question, but I had to put it in here because you're an architect by trade originally. Like, what does an architect actually do? Because I find myself getting confused about this sometimes. And, on your podcast, you have people on there who are architects, you have engineers, you have people involved in all sorts of, parts of kind of the real estate process, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, but I really want to get a handle on what, what architects actually do.
That's an excellent question. There is a lot of misunderstanding in the general public about what an architect does. And it makes sense. If you're not in the industry, you don't know. It's like I know you are an accountant and you're in the tax world, but that's it. Maybe like big account, something like that. But if I ask you, hey, can you do my taxes? I don't know if you can or not.
Yeah, I might punt on that one.
Right. Sure. But there are many things that people don't understand, but architecture is one of the ones that there's a huge misunderstanding. When I meet people, sometimes they say, I say, I'm an architect. Like, oh, wow. And I can see in their mind the picture they have. So they say, okay, can you build my house? I'm like, no, I'm not a builder or contractor. Or they're like, oh, wow, you have a lot of money. Or they're like, oh, wow, yeah, can you help me with this light fixture or something? And I'm like, no, that's an electrical engineer. Oh, yeah, can I move this wall? I'm like, well, a structural engineer will tell that. And at the end, they're like, so what the hell you do? Yeah. So when you're going to create a space, you create a building to host the space, right? To create that building, you need many different disciplines to make that happen, right? So the first conception of the building is usually created by the owner or client and the architect. So you said, hey man, I want a house. I'm like, great. You come to the architect first. And then I'm going to ask you a question. What kind of house do you like? Show me houses that you love. Tell me about your family. I ask a lot of questions. Based on the information you give me, I create a visual representation of what that house might be. So that's going to be like floor plans, elevations, 3D models. We're going to start talking about materials. So it's your house, right? But I'm a tool for you to help you make that dream a reality, because you know what you want, but you don't know exactly what that is. So I'm going to help you with that. So I'm walking you through the process, right? And it could be house, office, hotel, convention center, whatever that is. Once that part is completed, when you said, okay, I know this is the space I want. These are the rooms, these are the sizes, and that's how I want it to look like. That's like step one, what we call in the architectural world, schematic design. So that's a nice picture with some dimensions. You cannot build out of that. You cannot get a permit, right? Then next step, you need to bring engineers, which are the ones that they have particular expertise in each component of the building to make it work, which are civil engineer. They're in charge of everything that is outside of the building, roads, parking deck, landscaping, everything outside the building. Then you have a structural engineer, which is going to be the one calculating the structure, columns, beams, roofs, decks, things like that. It's all math. And, is this beam 10 inches or 40 inches or 2 inches? And why? They know. They calculate that. Electrical engineer, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection. Then you have specialties like audiovisual, art, lighting. But the architect brings everybody together. It's like the orchestra director. So when I'm working on a project, I create the skeleton, the settings for the space, but then I need to tell the structural engineer, give me a structure here. Now you give me mechanical design and electrical and plumbing, but I'm coordinating that they all fit within my vision of the space, because sometimes there are conflicts within each other. So I'm helping them take care of the vision that the client and I created, right? Because for a structural engineer, he wants the building to be safe. So he doesn't care if in the middle of your living room there is a 5-foot beam, because that's not his job. His job is to make sure that thing is not going to fall. So I'm like, dude, you need to move your beam, right? So I'm coordinating everybody all the time. And that's emails, technology, drawings, coordination, where we're telling, can I do this? No, yes. And then on top of that, you have like building codes and zoning regulations. So I'm trying to make sure that everybody is doing their job, but they're not killing that first vision that we created with the client. At the end of that process, we have a set of construction documents, which is a lot of plans and specifications that are telling somebody else specifically, this is how you build this, and these are the materials, and this is how you do it. And that set of plans we hand to a contractor. I'm not a contractor. A contractor buys the materials, he buys everything, and he hires people to build it. And in that phase, I'm after him, looking at everything he's doing, making sure that he's complying with the plans and specifications that were previously designed. So when the building is completed, the client is getting the space that we envisioned from the very beginning.
That is an elegant explanation for what I originally thought of as a very complicated topic, but you just made it sound so simple. And so I feel like, so when I see you on Instagram out with your hard hat on and you're out looking at the construction, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
Your job is to be effectively the proxy for your client in those situations. You're the one who, and I feel like more so than almost any of the other disciplines, you're the one who has to have the personal connection with the client. And that's why you ask questions like, tell me about yourself, because you need to be able to like have their vision in your head and be able to communicate it and make sure that what's happening. Okay. I feel like I understand what you do
good,
now.
Man. I feel good about that.
Yeah. That was a great answer. Oh man, it's really interesting. And so as you're going through that, I don't know. I'm going to jump ahead on a question here, actually, just because it seems like such a nice segue. When I see you doing work, I'm seeing you doing all sorts of stuff, and all of the pictures that I see online now, they all totally make sense because you're, at one point you're modeling, you're showing visual representations, you're going out to construction sites. But these look like big projects. One of the things that I was curious about is what's the typical life cycle for these types of projects, and what's your approach to managing them? And this is kind of dovetailing into more of the entrepreneurial discussion that I definitely want to have, but especially as somebody who, doesn't have like a boss breathing down your neck, how do you manage all of these moving parts?
Man, that's a great question. Sometimes I don't know how to manage that. One of the reasons why I love architecture so much is because there is room for everybody. There is room for artistic people. There is room for people who are very analytical. There is room for accuracy. There is room for creative expression. You need all that. All those steps, all those skills are needed to create, the end result of what architecture is. So I usually manage things, the way my brain is wired, so I love technology. So I rely heavily on technology. I'm very analytical. I'm very process oriented, and I'm very careful with details and following steps. So that's one of the ways I can do everything I do. There are some other parts where I feel stretched, and I will say will be more on the side of imagination and creative and things like that. I tend to be very structured. But since I don't have anyone to do that for me, I have to do it. So that's really pushing me to do that. And I've been able to do it, which again goes back to give me more confidence, because I realize I can do some things that I thought I was not able to do before, right? That I didn't think about that. So in a typical project, everything starts with one is just, creating marketing and branding. How do you attract clients? Once they're on the table and they consider you for a project, it's like, okay, how do I make them understand that I'm the best fit for their project? Do the sell the project. Once I sold the project, then go through the whole process until the project is finished. So that includes a lot of presentations, conversations, numbers, creating, how much I'm going to charge, defining that, subcontracting engineers, because I need them to work on the project. And then once the project is signed, start the process as I described before, the schematic design, And then it goes through the whole thing until construction. When I'm supervising, everything is good. The project, the client is using the space and they're happy, and I finish my job.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
I want to dig in a little bit on something you said about, first of all, when you talked about many moving parts, I feel like, and people with different skill sets, I feel like that's something I've encountered in project management too. And what I've noticed is sometimes when I do my job correctly, I feel like what I'm actually doing is forcing myself out of the position of being a bottleneck. I feel like my default setting is to make the mistake of trying to take everything on myself and suddenly being like, this is overwhelming. This is an impossible job. This is never going to happen. And I just noticed if I rely on people with skill sets that complement mine, that I find that helps. But one thing that I wanted to dig into was you talked about how you feel like I think you said that you had to learn and develop kind of the imagination side. And that's funny because I feel like most people, based off of your description of architecture and your Power of Design podcast, would automatically assume that that's exactly what you bring to the table. They would automatically assume, oh, you're the creative guy. You're the guy who has those types of answers. Yeah. So I mean, this is going a little bit off script, but how did you push through that? Because I feel like it doesn't matter what the discipline is. I feel like we all have things that we just have a lot of self-doubt around. And so how did you get better at that?
Well, great question and easy answer. To push through anything, you need to put yourself in a situation where you have no other options, right? So if I said, when I started my business, I quit my job. My wife was at home with my 3 kids. And next month I had to pay my bills and, pay for entertainment and food and everything for my family. I didn't know how to do it. You just have to do it. When I started my own business, I didn't have designers to help me design the project. I have to. So when you have to, you do it. I mean, this is that easy.
That's a terrifying answer.
That's why if you want to do something that you don't want, you feel that you don't want to do or that you're not able to do, just put yourself in a situation where you don't have other option. And that's going to force you to dig down in yourself and in who you are to become the real person that you've been created to be.
Okay, well, you're forcing me to go back to. Okay, the way this. Let's just read the way this question was originally scripted.
Do it.
I want to talk about entrepreneurship, risk tolerance, planning, and self-doubt. Your story is one of a leap of faith so large that I don't really have any real comparison in my own life. What triggered you to do it? How did you plan for it? And tell me about the first 6 months to a year after you did it. Was there any self-doubt or ways that you pivoted that you think listeners might benefit from hearing?
Yeah. Okay. So self-doubt is always there. That's for sure. Like I have self-doubt right now. That's something you can't get rid of. The thing that you can do is to take action with self-doubt. So you get used to living with your self-doubt and you just love it because it's part of who you are. But you don't let it stop it from taking action. That's one thing that I've learned, in these past 3 years since I started my business. So that's one thing. The other one is what I mentioned before. You need to basically burn your boats. When you have other option, you're not going to find out who you really are. Never. Because you have that option. So to me, the journey to entrepreneurship is burn your boats, and it's going to force you to believe in yourself and to do things that you were not doing if you were not in that situation before.
I knew this was going to happen. I was going to present what I thought was going to be a very complicated answer. And it's taking that leap of faith. And that's, that's not, it's not easy, but I really liked how you said that self-doubt never leaves you, that you just need to get used to it. And at some point you actually start to appreciate it as part of who you are. That's, I find that to be very helpful. One thing that you were talking about earlier is you were talking about the early stages of, what we would call like the practice development stage, where you're selling, you're trying to win new work. And I'd like to get in the details on this a little bit, if you don't mind, but I want to just kind of understand, how do you get paid? When you bid on work or when you come up with quotes, what does that process look like? And how do you communicate the value proposition of the power of design? And I want to frame this question just based off of my own background. I come from an industry, I work in public accounting, and there's a couple of different ways that we can bill for the work that we do. You can either have just like a structured billing where you say like, here's a certain deliverable, here's what we sell it at. It's a little bit commoditized. So, here's the price. Let us know if you're interested.
Yeah.
And then there's our time. You give them a rate card. You say, here is like our rates in order for this to be financially feasible on our end. Here's about how long we think it'll take. Rate card. And then another approach, an approach that I think is probably the most effective when it comes to consulting work is what we call value billing, where, you basically try to come to terms with the client about, like, here's how much value we feel like we can create. And so here's, the fee that we were thinking based off of that. So, but how does it work in your industry? Because I'm curious to know, I feel like when you walked through that description of what an architect does, like, I get it. And I totally get the value proposition there, but how do you do that when you're bidding on projects?
Okay, since you went really broad in your question, I'm going to go really broad on my answer.
Right.
So starting with, the value of things, right? Like how much something is worth, right? If I show you a picture that, it's a canvas, 10 by 10, and it's all these abstract things that you can't really tell what that is. And I said, hey man, how much you going to give me for that? Right? You say a number, $20.
$20, yeah.
If you say $20, it's worth $20. That's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. But if I show you the same thing and I said, hey man, this is a Picasso, it's signed here, it's worth $10 million. And there is somebody in the world that is willing to pay $10 million. So how much is worth? $10 million, right? It's the perception of value. Like, the actual thing doesn't really matter, right? things are worth what somebody's willing to pay for that. So that's one idea, right? The other idea is that things increase value when demand decreases, right? So if something is scarce, like, hey, there is going to be only 100 Teslas with this type of feature and they're going to be double the price. People are going to buy them just because nobody's going to have it. Only me is going to have it, right? So when I have something that nobody else has, is giving me uniqueness and is giving me something special. So I'm buying how that thing makes me feel different than the others. It's giving me some unique value. That's the other thing. The other thing is, we sell products, we sell services, we sell ideas, and I see businesses in like three types of businesses. There's like the me too business, which is, do you sell tax services? Yes. Oh, me too. There are millions of me too. They also sell the same thing you sell.
Sure.
So I'm going to buy the one that is the cheapest, because if they're all giving me the same, I get more value when I pay less for the same thing, right? That's a red ocean strategy. Everybody's fighting for the lowest value. That's the me too. The second type of business is the me better business, which is, do you sell tax services? Sure. And somebody says, oh, I'll do it better. No, I'm better. No, I'm better. So everybody's fighting, trying to convince me why they're better. And a lot of the marketing that people do is based on that. They're trying to explain why they're better, but they don't know how, right? So as a buyer, I'm going to buy the one I consider is better. And there is a third category, which is the me only business, which is, I'm going to buy tax services for my company that has these characteristics. Who sells that? And you said, me. I'm the only one who sells that. Nobody else does it. I don't care how much you charge. I'm going to pay you because nobody else can fulfill that need I have. So that perception of value is huge, because when you realize that you're getting something so unique that you cannot get it somewhere else, the perception of value disappears. And when you see companies like, I don't know, Airbnb or Netflix or Uber, they have unique offerings. Yeah, after that, there's some copycats, but they're the only in their category. There's nobody else that they're doing that. So the perception of value is huge. So they explode. They become giant immediately. Going back to what I do now. So it's interesting because, you asked me about like pricing and how do I get paid in my industry. The industry is irrelevant. The marketplace is an exchange of money for a product or service. That's it. What the product or service is, it's irrelevant. The perception of value is what drives everything. There are people that do the same thing that you do, but they charge 10 times more and they get paid 10 times more. Doing the exact same thing, probably spending the same amount of hours. So it's not about what you do. It's about the perception of value that you bring to the table. Okay.
Wow. So then sell me on it. What are the differentiating factors for your company, for Osa Studio?
Great. Okay. So all that theory was to kind of go to my business. So I started my business, right? 3.5 years ago, and selling architectural services. And like any other service, there are market rates, right? So, architects usually charge some amounts, and it could be per square footage, or sometimes it's a percentage of construction cost, right? So let's say if you have a project and the construction is going to cost X amount, you should budget about 5% of that cost to be architectural design fees. And then once you add engineering and other professionals, could be like 10%. So like a safe number, average could be 10% of construction cost for design fees. So that start giving you an idea.
Okay.
Right? But you can build the same house with very expensive materials or the same house with very cheap materials, right? So there's a lot of room there. So that's where sometimes square footage comes into play. So you can say, okay, I charge $10 per square foot or $7 or $8, and depending on the building type, there's some rates that are typical in the marketplace, right? So for restaurants, you charge this, for office. So that's how you play the game. So when I start playing the game, well, I need to play the game that's being played, right? Because they're buying the same. I'm a Me Too business, right? So I go to the marketplace and they're like, I need an office. And somebody says, I can do it. And I'm like, me too. How much? Well, this. So yes. So I still play those games. So my business, my business and my strategy is like, how do I go from a Me Too business to a Me Better to a Me Only, right? So how do I quickly become a Me Only business immediately? So I feel that as a business owner, I'm in this kitchen cooking recipes to create the Me Only recipe, right? And I start creating different types of offerings and different ways to differentiate myself. So the value that I'm bringing to the client is exponentially higher than what others are doing. So I sell 3 types of services today, and I have ideas to sell other more, but basically I sell architectural design. I sell brand design, which is more about branding, marketing, logos, business cards, brochures, websites. And I sell consulting, and consulting is brand strategy, strategic planning, helping people think. When you look at profit margins like architecture in general, worldwide is like a 15% profit margin business because you're selling time, right? At the market rate. Then brand design, you can get more profit, and consulting, you get a lot more profit. So I start cooking, different recipes. And sometimes I sell like brand consulting services where I go to a company that is in the design, construction, or real estate world, and I help them clarify what's the unique differentiator they bring to the marketplace. And that's a series of meetings, conversations, and workshops where, the money is high for a very little of my time. So I make good money versus other services where I invest a lot of time and I get paid the same amount that I was paid for doing, 10% of the time of work. So I get paid by, you present me a project, I estimate what the market rate is and how long it's going to take me, and I give you a price. That's one way. And the other way is when I know I'm the Me Only, then I really start like throwing darts in the dark, and I charge you $1,000. And after that, I charge $2,000, and then $6,000, and then $12,000. And I see how far I can go, because whatever I'm offering, they have no way to compare that with any other offering in the marketplace.
That's a really interesting kind of almost entrepreneurial life cycle, the way that you have it laid out. Like you start out as, when you first kind of make your debut, when you make the jump from doing your job within a corporate setting to being an entrepreneur, you almost have no choice, unless there's some differentiator out there already. You almost have no choice but to be sort of a Me Too. And so I think the answer there is to come in under the competition. That's right. I mean, I feel like that's what you would have to do until you establish yourself as a Me Better. People start to, that's where kind of referrals come in and things like that. Hey, this guy actually does really good work. And then that whole time though, you're that cook in the kitchen who's working on the Me Only. That's good. That's a really helpful
because at the end of the day, like those 3 models, they work and they're good, but they all have consequences. Like when you're Me Too, it's all about scale.
Sure.
So you increase complexity. So in order to grow and have the life you want, you need a lot of people and you need a lot of money, which is good. I mean, and happens all the time. And it goes like that. But the Me Better It's a very interesting to me because the input is minimum, but the output of money is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when it comes to the Me Better, it's the challenge is twofold, right? Because you have to actually do better work, but you also have to communicate that you're doing better work. And that's
right.
where kind of marketing and things like that.
Well, that brings the next conversation because remember I told you it's about the perception of value.
Sure.
Perception is reality. And you manage perception through branding and marketing.
So I'm looking at our list now and I'm looking at the next bullet point. It just says your philosophy. And so I know this is something that's going to potentially just spin out of control. And that's exactly what I want to have happen.
Let's do it.
So first one is work-life balance. This is something I've talked to a couple of entrepreneurs about. It's not easy even within a corporate setting. I can attest to that. But I mean, you're a dad, you have a family. How do you approach work-life balance and planning your day around your work and your family obligations?
So when I talk to my kids about time, I tell them money and time is the same. You can waste time, you can waste money, you can invest time, you can invest money. But money, you can make more. Time, you can't, right? So every day you live is one day less of life that you have. So I try to value time more than money. I'm not a workaholic, that's for sure. I think probably workaholism is the number one addiction of modern U.S. adult male, which is not. Is worn as a badge of honor, which is sad. When you said, how are you doing? I'm busy. I'm like, doing good, man. Man, working 80 hours. Like we put some people neglecting their family and their health and their leisure time in a pedestal, that's totally wrong. I mean, that sucks. So I'm very careful with that. I don't work too much. I work probably my 40 hours a week and maybe a little bit more. I don't like to work on weekends at all because I want to be with my family. Sometimes I do it because I calculate that commitment and I do it for a specific reason, for a specific project, for a specific client, because I know that investment is going to multiply. But I try to be very careful with my time because for me, first is the time I need for myself, then the time I need with my family, and my job or what I do with my work is third. It's not the first one. So I don't really like to spend too much time working. The other side of that is interesting because we see ourselves as like machines, like we get that machine working. Like the more that machine is on, the more it's going to produce. And it's not like that. There are many different theories when you start looking at being at your own business and you realize that, it's not one-to-one the amount of time you spend with the amount of money that you're getting. Is more about now you're selling value, you're not selling time. So when you're an entrepreneur, you need to see yourself as an athlete or as a performer, let's say like a singer. So when you're an athlete or a performer, you have 3 pockets of time, right? So you have performing time, which is game day, right? You go to the game and you play and you score, and that's why you pay the big bucks. But how long is the game? 2 hours, 6 hours each week? That's it. What are you doing the rest of the week? So the rest of the week, you're doing 2 other things. You are getting prepared, you're training, and you're resting, right? But look at that. You're resting and training more than you're playing. So when you look at things that way, the more you rest and the more you get prepared, the better you be at game day. The problem with our mentality is that we think we're in game day every day. So you're exhausted. You don't have the resources. You don't have the clarity. You don't have the understanding to be at your best. So we're playing at 50% of our capacity. That's why when we see somebody else playing at 80%, we're like, oh my God, how do they do that? Well, you still you have it too. The thing is that you're wasting your resources because you're focusing your energy on the wrong things.
I'm immediately drawing so many comparisons to things I have run into just in my life. And like it sounds so silly to talk to you about it, but like I've been in situations where I'm doing work a certain way, and the whole time I'm typing and thinking to myself, there's a much better way I could be doing this right now. But I don't have the time to, think about like the better or more efficient way to do it because I've got to get this thing out. And I feel like that same dilemma is just happening to people all over the country, all over the world right now, because everyone just feels this, I don't know. And maybe it's something, I don't know how much it has to do with, COVID and everything going on and everyone suddenly working remotely and things like that. But it does just seem like the work's just kind of like constantly out there, and you don't have time to think. And I feel like the times when I have had time to think have been in some ways some of my most productive moments, because I've suddenly been able to see the big picture with a project. Be like, oh, wait, actually, I just need to turn this way. And it makes a lot more sense. Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful, because I know that's something that I struggle with. The whole I'm busy thing. Like
that's ridiculous. And you're busy because you agreed to do those things. Like, it's your fault.
Yeah.
You can say no. That's okay.
Yeah. And I will say, just like hanging out with you, like you've never seemed, like overwhelmed with your work or anything like that.
Right.
So that's that. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that you and I both have a shared interest in is the idea of personal development. And I know you actually had Henry on your podcast a while back, and you talked through an analogy where you drew a comparison from personal development to wheels on a car, and you kind of put personal development into 4 different categories. And I thought it was really interesting. Would you mind expanding on that?
Sure. So that was one of the things I was thinking about years ago, about like, okay, how do you really experience a good life, knowing and understanding that you have control of some things, but most of the things you have no control of, right? Circumstances are out there and there's nothing you can do. So I thought about, what if our journey through life is like driving a car? So your car is yourself, and you have 4 wheels. You have control of your car and you have control of your wheels. You take care of your car and you wash it and clean it and do maintenance. But the road you're taking, you have no control of. You don't know if where you're going is uphill or downhill or rocky. You can't do anything. So at least the best you can do is have the best car you can. So if you find something difficult, your car is going to be strong enough to overcome that. So I look at our car being 4 wheels, having 1 wheel that is spiritual, because we have a spirit, right? Having another wheel that is physical, which is our body. Having another wheel, which is mental, which is our intellect, rational. And having the 4th wheel, which is your relationships, how you relate to others. So I see it as the stronger those 4 wheels are, the better the ride will be, right? So if I start working in my spiritual relationships and what I think I am as a soul, that's good. And if I invest time on developing that, is going to be a strong will. If I start developing my mental will, learning, understanding, my rational will, my professional development is going to be strong, that will is going to be in good shape. If I work on my body and I eat good food and I exercise and I feel good about it and I'm healthy, that will is going to be good. And then my relationships, starting with my relationship with myself and then with others, and if it's strong, that's a good car. So I feel that most people in the world, they may have a one wheel that is overinflated and one that's flat or two that's flat. So when they're riding through life, they're riding at 20 miles per hour. And the average might be 40 miles per hour. But once in a while, you see somebody at 100 miles per hour and you're like, man, what is that? What happened? Well, it's like when you get things under control, the circumstances are irrelevant. You're confident of your car because that's when you're in there. So based on that, and I shared that with Henry, I developed like a week, like the ideal week, where it's a schedule where I show like every day, how do you feed any of those tires? And you start giving maintenance to any of those tires every single day, because it's a matter of compound interest. You know, every day you need to do a little bit. You can't ignore one of the other. And any person that you see having troubles through life, for sure, you're going to be able to pinpoint one or two of those or three of those tires that they have not been invested in.
Okay, I have so many questions, and I feel like I want to be careful to limit them so that I really focus on what I really want to know. And I feel like knowing you, hearing your explanation, hearing about your background, hearing about some of the things that you feel that you've struggled with in the past. If I'm picturing your car, and this is a dangerous thing to do, you shouldn't try it, but I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah, do it.
I feel like maybe the intellect side probably came pretty naturally to you. But you talked about relationships, and you even said, which I was thinking the exact same thing, that includes improving the relationship with yourself. That seems like a tire that you may have needed to be proactive about inflating at some point in this journey. And how did you inflate that tire?
I tell you. So, you know, when you're driving or showering, that you're thinking and you're talking to yourself.
You mentioned the two places where I probably come up with the best idea.
Sure. So most of your life is a conversation with yourself. The person you talk the most is yourself. So you have a relationship with yourself, and have you realized that when you come up with ideas that are scary, like you should start a business or you should do this, 5 seconds later, you give yourself the reasons why not to do it, because you love yourself, right? And those pursuing all those ideas, they're going to push you out of your comfort zone, and you want to be comforted. You want to be safe, right? What happens is that when you tell those things to yourself, you're lying to yourself, because, oh, yes, you can achieve them. Yes, you can pursue them. Yes, you have the potential. But you lie to yourself and you believe your own lies. So we live in a process where we're lying to ourselves, we believe our own lives, and then we think that's normal. And we live based on limitations that we put on ourselves. So do you think that any relationship that is based on lies is a good relationship?
I do not.
So we live lying to ourselves, and that's bad. Because deep down, you know that yes, you can, yes, you have the potential, but you resent yourself. And you start sabotaging yourself. Because you don't like who you are, because you don't like what you're telling you. Now, this is very deep in the subconscious mind. Now, you can fix that. How do you fix relationship based on lies? Telling the truth. Living the truth. So you start telling yourself the truth, and you start believing who you really are. Now, you're not going to say, I should start a business and you quit tomorrow. You do it little by little because you need to gain trust in yourself. How do you trust somebody? You see something and they do it. And like, okay, yeah. And then you give them something else and they do it. And then something else and they do it. And you start stepping up the level of commitment until you say, oh my God, I trust this person. Take my car keys, do whatever you want. You can do it because I trust you. So it's developing trust in yourself. So how I do that, when you ask me about that, is giving myself little tasks and proving to myself that I'm doing what I said I was going to do, and not being too strict about those tasks, because part of the, how do I say this? Part of the problem is that we give ourselves tests that are too big that we know we're going to fail, because you know how to trick yourself easily. So don't trick yourself. When you start treating yourself with compassion and love and treating the way you will treat others, you'll see that you start building that trust in yourself.
I feel like we could just stop recording now. It's like, that is so thoughtful. And, I don't know. I thank you for that.
Sure.
That was really, really helpful. My next question on here sounds so trivial now. It's basically, have you read any good books lately? Nonfiction. You recommended Mindset, by Dr. Carol Dweck. That was a great book. Thank you very much for recommending that. I feel, and actually now that I think about it, some of the ideas you just talked about were some of the ideas that were espoused in the book, which is that, you need to develop a mindset that doesn't shame failure, and that encourages growth, and doesn't encourage just getting things right and getting perfect scores and things like that. And that really resonated with me. Do you have any other good recommendations? Because I feel like that one, you really knocked it out of the park. So are there any other books or podcast recommendations you have?
No, no, because one of the things that I realized is being one of my not a problem, but the ones that I lie to myself is that I need more information. I need more input. And I think I'm at the point where I realize I don't need more input. I have what it takes to start generating input for others. Like, it's okay. And I'm starting to believe it. Like, I can say things.
How did you get there? And the reason why I ask, and sorry to interrupt, but this is something that I've struggled with both within the podcasting realm and in the blogging realm. I feel like it feels disingenuous sometimes to write about things like personal development. I'm like, what do I have to contribute? Things like that. And a lot of self-doubt creeps in. How did you get there? Because that seems to me a very big step.
I don't know. I just got there, getting there, just realizing that consuming incredible amount of books and podcasts and ideas and concepts. And when you consume a lot, and I think I'm addicted to information. I just love the, more information. Yeah, let's do it. But when you start realizing that the information start repeating itself, and you can quickly just get to patterns like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And everybody's telling the exact same story, the exact same thing in many different ways. And that's okay. But once you recognize the source and the core concept, you realize that the different way people tell the messages is because there are more people like them that they only get the message that way. So you have a way to deliver that same message that you think everybody's telling, but somebody needs to hear it from your voice, from your point of view, from your background, from who you are, because you connect and align with a lot of people that they're not connected to that kind of information.
That's very encouraging. Thank you for saying that. And I I have slowly started to recognize that too. Because I read a lot of nonfiction and I listen to a lot of podcasts too. And I do notice common strands, but I notice that, I'll go back and read a book that I haven't read in years, and then I'll reread it and it'll seem like a completely different book. And it's because my perspective has changed and I've learned so much. And so, well, hey, no worries. We don't need any additional book recommendations, but that's a very helpful answer. Final question. I
thought we were just getting started. I thought it was the introduction.
This one could be a big question. The tagline for the podcast is "Do better this year," and it's a tagline I came up with pre-COVID-19. Yeah, and it's been very interesting to hear guests talk about ways that they are pivoting. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that, be about that. But, tell me about your future plans and how are you planning on doing better this year and maybe even inflating some of those tires? Yeah.
So before that, I'm going to give you one connection to my earliest story about coming to United States. Sure. Remember when I went to pay for with my friend to pay for his car insurance, and there was a lady from Venezuela.
Yeah.
She's my wife today.
Well, because she's the one who got you connected to the busing job.
That's right.
Yeah, nice.
So it was crazy. Like that was the first time we saw each other.
That is crazy.
I know.
Your life should be a movie.
I know.
That's wild. That's awesome.
Yeah. So about your question, I will say, I'm very excited about New Year's and I make my plans and my resolutions. But, the more years happen and I tried and I fail and some things are good, sometimes are better, the more I realize that I don't need new resolutions. Like, I love your resolution. Do better this year. That's a great one. Like, just do better. So one of the things that I've been thinking and applying, like, let's say in the last 2 or 3 years, has been trust yourself more. I think that's the best thing you can do because you are experiencing life on your own. You're here existing. You don't know why or how, but you're here. And you have everything you need inside of you. Or what we call like instinct or gut feeling. Sometimes we tend to ignore that. That's how you really are. Trusting that thing is huge because that's when you're truthful to yourself. That happens for a reason. I don't have an explanation of that, but when you trust yourself more, you feel much better. You feel stronger. That relationship with yourself becomes much better.
That's awesome. And that's such a good note to end on, the idea of just trusting yourself more and improving your relationship with yourself. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. Jack, I had very high expectations going into this conversation. I'm not going to lie. We've had such fun conversations in the past, and I wanted to capture just a sliver of that if possible. And this has been absolutely amazing. I want to just thank you for being on the podcast. If people want to find out more about the work that you do, where can they find you? Where can they find out more?
So they can look at my podcast, The Power of Design podcast.com. If you go to that URL, you'll find it. My business is www.ossastudio.com, also with double S. Or just, look at The Power of Design, Twitter, Instagram, and you'll find me.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jack. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to keeping the conversations coming.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and Osa Studio at osastudio.com and follow us on Instagram at The Power of Design Podcast. Thank you.